A lot of people don't even realize that we've got wounds that are generational or ancestral that we don't even really know about and how it's affecting us. When we heal the wounds, we can heal the past and the future.
Healing means transformation. So going through a very, very dark time and making the decision to trust your strength to transform to something new and stronger.
Healing is actually joining together of parts in a way to become more whole. Because one way of thinking about the traumas that we experience are that it's anything that happens at a time where we don't feel safe to really feel the emotions that we're going through in that experience. And so we kind of store it away.
When there's an impact on the body, for example, and we do have a wound, it takes time and takes, tending to and cleaning and all of that kind of stuff before it can actually heal. And when it heals, that piece, kind of becomes whole again, right? But the cool thing about it is that oftentimes after the scab has formed and, kind of falls off, there's a scar there that's left.
There was one word that I connected with each one of you as you were relating what healing meant to you. And it kind of summarizes for me what healing is all about. And so the whole healing process is those three words: awareness, so that you can transform, so that you can do the recovery and become whole.
Welcome to today's Wisdom Circle. My name's Sophia from Sacred You, and we are so very honored to be able to host this Wisdom Circle that is such an important topic for everyone in our world, and that is healing the wounds we did not choose. And today with us, we have beautiful women, amazing women from all over the world. So I just want to honor everyone for being here. And Rosemary, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're calling from and why are you interested in this wonderful topic of healing the wounds we did not choose?
Thank you, Sophia. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here and amongst so many amazing women whom some I haven't met. So it's great to have a conversation. I'm Rosemary. I'm the founder of the Riva Experience, and my whole purpose with Riva has been a journey through wounds and healing the wounds. I'm 74 years young, and I just started 3 years ago. So those wounds helped me get to where I am today. And this is my way of saying thank you to help so that I can help others clear and heal and understand their wounds and have a journey that's profitable, positive, and loving.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And I'm really very interested in hearing all that you've got to share. So thank you. And Kelly, welcome to our Wisdom Circle. This is Kelly's first time with Sacred You, so I'm really grateful that you've joined us. Tell us a little bit about your beautiful self and why did you join up to today's Wisdom Circle?
Thank you for having me. This is an exciting group to be a part of. I am a brain injury survivor and advocate, and that is my wound that I did not choose. And taking lemons and making lemonade, I became an author, wrote a book to help other people rediscover themselves after a brain injury.
Thank you. Definitely want to hear about that too more. And our wonderful Anna, who is tuning in from the Southern Hemisphere too, but with an incredible backyard that I do think we're all jealous of. Thank you for joining us, Anna. And what brought you today? And again, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Sophia. Very happy to be here. Everyone has such a unique and beautiful story. I think we really create a lot of powerful energy when we're together. So yes, I'm very happy. My name is PASHYANTI, yes, and I like to guide and teach people how to do healing for themselves. It doesn't mean that I leave them alone. I can go through it with them, but I really like to teach people that not only can they heal, but they have all the resources they need. And they just need to remember how that works. And so it's about empowering people, really, because in my journey, I've healed a lot, definitely. Over, let's say, my healing journey began about maybe 15 years ago. But even after you start the healing process, new things still happen, things still come up. And so it's also an upkeep process. It's a process of upkeep. Also, I would say that we're never truly finished healing and we just close the door and move on with our lives. It's not quite like that. And so it's nice to know what to do the minute something comes up so that it doesn't get stuck in the body as trauma, for example. And
Yes.
so both sides of that healing and upkeep or maintenance that just allows us to really be resilient and weather any storm. So yeah, that's my journey. Healing has brought me to where I am now, where I feel empowered to live out in a new country with a new culture and a new language and just be part of nature. And before I started my healing journey, I think that would not have been possible because I was so weighed down by my own dense pain. Yeah, I want to give that sense of freedom to everyone.
Thank you for all that. It's you've got such wisdom and such experience, like all these amazing women, that it's an inspiration. And as you said, it gives a sense of freedom for others too, because it is possible to heal from these wounds that have happened to us, that have happened to our ancestors. They may not have even happened to us, but we've carried them on. So we'd love to get to know more. Thank you so much. And our beautiful Abby, who is joining us again after Wisdom Circle yesterday. So thank you so much for coming back, Abby, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm just starting to really understand why Taiwana calls this her home. It is very homey vibes, this community. So I'm Abby Teixeira. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am a speaker. I'm a published writer and author. I'm a trauma recovery coach, feminine business mentor. I'm also a complex trauma survivor in recovery from addiction. Actually, this month, October, this weekend is 11 years for me of that journey that I'm celebrating. And I'm also a mama of four. I have four little ones, and that keep me very much on my toes and very busy. And I'm very proud to be the cycle breaker in my family. And now being able to help other cycle breaking women and femmes, especially other moms, healers, coaches, creatives, really focusing on the global majority women. So this is Black, Indigenous women of color, helping them to rise above from survival mode to really stepping into their leadership and their truth. And so I blend in identity shifting transformational coaching as well as ancestral wisdom and feminine leadership to help guide them into reclaiming their voice, power, and purpose. And this topic is very near and dear for me. As I mentioned, I'm a survivor. And so I have spent the last 11 years healing the wounds I did not choose, a lot of the wounds I did not choose. And it has been the most incredible journey of really becoming and remembering who I actually am before all the trauma that happened and what I'm meant to do here in the world and all of that kind of stuff, and really transmuting and alchemizing the trauma that I've experienced into something that is meaningful, something that really helps not only myself, but others who undoubtedly are out there experiencing things that they think one of the big key things is just this loneliness piece, right? Like the isolation piece, that I'm the only one that's had this experience. No one else can get it, all of that kind of stuff. And that's why I think it's so important to have conversations about these topics so that others can see themselves in someone else and say that there is hope, that we do recover and that we can heal and that we can truly create something beautiful and meaningful from pain and the mess of life, right? Really excited to dive into this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Abby. Really, and I want to go into much more what you just said, and especially recovering from the mess of life that a lot of us, also as the topic is, healing the wounds that we did not choose. That there's so much that we've carried on from ancestors, from generation and everything else that we did not even know about. So I'd love to know, and let's just have a general conversation. It is a wisdom circle. I'm really inviting women to really just share, whoever would like to go, I'm not going to pick names today, but can we just start generally? What does the word healing really mean to you today?
I'll go
I'll
ahead and
go.
start.
Oh, yes.
Be,
Yes.
being the newbie. Healing means transformation. So going through a very dark time and making the decision to trust your strength to transform to something new and stronger.
Thank you. And so true to really being able to use that pain to transform into something stronger. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share for them? Thank you, Anna. Yes.
Yes. Building on that, yeah, it's definitely a transformative process. It really is. And the one way I like to think about it is that healing is actually joining together of parts in a way to become more whole. Because one way of thinking about the traumas that we experience are that it's anything that happens at a time where we don't feel safe to really feel the emotions that we're going through in that experience. And so we store it away. And so it's not only stored in the body, aches and pains, but it's also stored in the subconscious. And so when we bring the light of awareness to that painful part of ourselves, we allow it to rejoin our conscious mind in a way that makes us more whole. We're more ourselves and less fractured. Not to say that we're broken, not at all. We have just different aspects of ourselves that are going through different things. Some of them stuck at different times in our lives, perhaps. And we're just rejoining the parts of ourselves so that we can really not only feel more happy and at peace, but also more powerful. Because these energies that we've been dragging behind us with their heavy weights all those years, those are full of power and energy that when we really integrate with that and heal, we can use that power and energy to create amazing things in our lives and to become who we truly are. So that you could say that's the person that is the one who, let's say, how do I put this? The person before they experienced the trauma, perhaps. And you could also just say more of who you really are on a deep level, that soul essence that never changes, no matter what happens to you. That part of ourselves is always there. And the more we can integrate with that, see, it's more integrating and integrating to become more whole, more of ourselves that is our true soul essence that is so powerful to change our lives and to be happy. So that's one of my goals when I think about healing.
Yeah, again, to change and become powerful, to really use that, to use those wounds to step into the powers that we are, of who we are. Thank you. And Abby or Rosemary, would you like to share anything before we continue?
Sure. I appreciated that Anna brought up wholeness when thinking about healing, because I think it's Dr. Gabor Mate that talks about his definition of healing, which is a return to wholeness. Because when we think about trauma, like the word trauma means wound, it's like an open, like something like it's like a wound. And so I do have a nursing background. I've been a nurse on the now very much on the side for over 18 years. And so I always like to think about these analogies because I've worked with like wound care and all of that kind of stuff. And so I know that when there's an impact on the body, for example, and we do have a wound, it takes time and takes tending to and cleaning and all of that kind of stuff before it can actually heal. And when it heals, your that piece becomes whole again, right? But the cool thing about it is that oftentimes after the scab has formed and falls off, there's a scar there that's left. And so when we think about trauma in our lives, I know for me personally, when I think about all the traumatic experiences that I've been through, they've left scars on my body, both literally and figuratively. And now I look at them and they're reminders for me, the reminders of things that have happened that at one time were deeply painful. And now I'm able to speak from that place. There's this quote that I've been really thinking about lately about like really speaking from the wound or from the scar rather than the wound. And so maybe at a time in my life, I couldn't speak from that wounded place because it was so fresh still. It was so fresh. I was still processing it and navigating it and all of that kind of stuff. But now that it's healed over and it's become a scar, I'm able to now speak on it. And instead of it overtaking me, I'm able to speak on it from a place of kind of empowerment. Like, I've moved through this. It doesn't necessarily affect me in the way that it used to, but that took time, right? It took lots and lots of time and patience. And sometimes those wounds reopened. And so then I had to go back into the whole cleaning phase and all of that, and the patience that it takes for it to finally heal over. And that's my life's work now, really. It's that return to wholeness. And then being able to not only walk myself back home, but help others walk themselves back to themselves and back to their own homes, kind of thing. And yeah, it's a really in-depth, interesting journey. And we all have scars. We all have our wounds that we've healed or are in the process of healing. I always say that none of us leaves this earth unscathed. We all come here, we have experiences, human experiences, and we all suffer wounding in one way, shape, or form. It's what we do afterwards, right? And how we tend to them and how we're able to go back to that wholeness piece. That's where the medicine is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to go into this so much more deeper. Before we do, Rosemary, would you like to share anything from you? What does healing mean for you?
So listening to these beautiful ladies, there was one word that I connected with each one of you as you were relating what healing meant to you. And it summarizes for me what healing is all about. Kelly, your key word that I picked up was transformation. Healing is a process of transforming. Anna, yours was awareness, becoming aware of what the wound was so that it can be healed, it can be transferred. And Abby, yours was recovery of the healing of the wound and recognizing what that scar is so that you can move forward, taking that next step. Anna, you also mentioned something about keeping everything inside, and that's what my journey has been. All the wounds and all the hurts and things that I couldn't talk about, I put them in a little box and just kept them in my chest. And that didn't help me. That just made me feel more like a victim, made me feel small, and that's because I allowed it. And so the whole healing process is those three words, the awareness, so that you can transform, so that you can do the recovery and become whole. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad I went last so that I could pick up all those words, those important healing words. And I think that summarizes it beautifully for me anyway.
Thank you, Rosemary. And ditto to everything that you just said. And it really is. We've got a lot of wisdom here. Thank you ever so much for bringing that out. And for everyone who is watching this, do, even if it's going back and listening again and picking up on the beautiful wisdom that these women are sharing. So thank you. And I'd love to go back. Can we just start at the beginning, if that's okay? Especially for this topic that I have to just acknowledge our beautiful host, Tawana Yvette, chose this topic and was going to be facilitating today's Wisdom Circle, but hasn't been able to join us. And we've had life experiences. We have wounds that we can see. But the wounds that we did not choose, how does someone who might be just starting off in their life's journey, how does someone even know that they've got wounds from past generations that they did not choose? How do we even know that? Anna, yes.
I would say that it can be sometimes a bit confusing, but throughout the long process of healing the various things that come up, you see, the next thing that arises in you, the next thing that you feel is what you need to put your awareness on to heal it. It doesn't mean we have to heal everything at once. Just whatever is coming up is what is there for you to heal. It won't be too much. It won't be more than you can handle, even though it might feel like it. Your body and your subconscious and your soul knows what it's presenting to you to heal. And if we don't know where the pain is coming from, we work through it as much as we can. And when we get a little more advanced in our journey, we might be able to sense then that some things seem to be affecting us that don't have a correspondence in our childhood or in our own personal lives. We can also see the patterns in our family. If there is addiction that or abuse that runs like a thread throughout a family line, and you can see that it's something that multiple people in your family maybe have dealt with or are dealing with. Or even if you know your family's histories from the past, if you know the stories that have been passed down, and some of them came from a certain place and went through a certain thing. It could be a famine, it could be slavery, it could be a war. We don't know. It could be lots of different things. It could be domestic violence, lots of different things that can be passed down through the family line epigenetically. And so once we have moved through a lot of the acute issues that we're dealing with, I think it's easier to then sense if things are more generational, kind of generational trauma, generational pain in that sense, because it won't always be always in our face, but it could be. It could be a huge wound in that family that you also went through. And so just know that whatever you're healing, you are doing this not only for yourself, but it really heals your family line also. So the more that you specifically focus on healing the generational line, the more that the healing really does affect your family, even people who are still alive now, not only people who have passed. So yeah, there's a ton of ways to do that, but I think generally you can get a sense of something that almost doesn't feel like it's from your own life or from your family line. Yeah, lots of ways.
Thank you. Thank you. Want to go more into that, especially healing. If we heal stuff now, it heals generations. Definitely want to go into more of that, but I'd love to give these women an opportunity, everyone else, an opportunity to share, like, how do we really know that what we're going through is generational trauma, wounds that we did not choose, compared to just life, stuff that's happening to us in our life? How do we know?
So I know I've personally experienced this in a couple of ways, and Anna did touch on a few things there. First, I wanted to share this really powerful quote that I love, and it talks about how we as women, when we step into, like, when we choose to heal, we're not only just choosing to heal for ourselves, but we're also choosing to heal 7 generations before us and 7 like forward, right? And so I think that's so powerful when we think about the impact. And so that gets me thinking, if because the same is true in the opposite. When intergenerational trauma gets passed down, right? It's not just it didn't just happen just once kind of thing, right? It happened through, like, one person, let's say, started this whatever experience, and then it got passed down on and on. Sorry, my kids are like right now. And so the way I've experienced learning to differentiate the healing the wounds that aren't mine to carry, there's 2 different ways. So growing up in a very traumatic, kind of dysfunctional family, there was a lot of things that, especially me being the oldest daughter of an oldest daughter, and there was a lot of things that I picked up as my responsibility that were not mine. You know, there were problems that maybe my parents were having or my siblings were having, and I would take it upon myself to carry those problems and try to fix them and try to figure them out and all of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until way later in my life, when I had my own family, I was married and had my kids and my own family, and then it took somebody outside, where it was my husband in this case, who pointed it out to me and was like, do you realize that these aren't your problems to fix, to carry? Like, they're not your responsibility. They're all grown adults, that they have the opportunity to figure things out themselves, right? And so that was a really big eye-opening thing for me, where I recognized that I was carrying these patterns, I was carrying these things that weren't even mine to be dealing with, and all of that kind of stuff. And when I got to that understanding, it was like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders when I realized the difference between that. Now, the other thing that I've experienced is the ancestral patterns, right? Where, in doing a lot of the work that I've done in the last few years, where I start looking at my lineage and the things that have run in my lineage and all of that kind of stuff, I've started to pick up on things that, sorry, it's like really sunny here right now. And it's like radiating on my face right now. That's why I'm like right by the window. I started to realize that there were a lot of things that I was also carrying that were generational, they were intergenerational patterns. One that I can think of in specific, that even in the work that I do with my clients, that many of us women carry, is like money patterns, ancestral money patterns. And we may not even know like why am I always in this like loop? Why am I always in this cycle when it comes to like money? And then we realize when we do some deep inner work, we recognize that there was actually patterns that were passed down ancestrally that became subconscious. And that could be a talk in itself. It's a really deep, juicy kind of thing to discuss. But that's how I've experienced it, where there's things that are very, like, I can see that they're not mine. And then there's things that I may not even be aware of because they're so subconscious, or they've just been passed intergenerationally and they're almost part of your DNA. But that's the cool thing about epigenetics, is that we have the ability to break those patterns and rewrite new codes so that the ones moving forward, my kids, won't have to experience these blockages, these cycles, these patterns that aren't even theirs to carry. They'll have different things that they'll be carrying, but not the ones that I'm actively working on healing for that 7 generations back and forward.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Abby. Thank you. I want to know more about healing 7 generations past and forward. So, Kelly or Rosemary, Kelly, you're off mute. Would you like to share? Edie, how do you tell, or how did you tell, what's the difference between healing a wound from the past and living life now, all the stuff that comes up in life? Is that always affecting us? Is our wounds from the past that we don't know about always affecting our life now? And
Yes.
would you like to share anything about the past generations?
I think that before going forward, you have to go back and you have to become aware of your history. And I have recently gone on a personal research of studying the real history of the US and have learned so much about the true foundation of our country, which was built on white supremacy and slavery and genocide. And knowing that, it makes me think that I often do mention this when I talk about getting better from a brain injury, is that it's great that you are resilient, but it is better if there are other people around you to support you in your recovery. And I often think of the Japanese proverb, the samurai warrior falls down 7 times but stands up 8.
Mm.
And when I think of that proverb, it makes me think, I wonder if some of those times that warrior fell, that other family members and colleagues helped him stand up. And so I think it's really important that we all learn our history, whether it's in the country that you live, that you've been raised in, or your family history, because those wounds persist now. And knowing those wounds and where they come from will help you love and understand and respect your brothers and sisters that live in your community and support them in their healing when you interact with them. And with that, that will help you also with your healing, because was really frustrated at work because management was so mean. They wouldn't provide me with some of my accommodations that I requested. And so what I worked in was a toxic work environment, right? And when you look at capitalism and corporations, they're built on slavery and the ideals of white supremacy and the wealthy and powerful men. And it's just really interesting to look back that history hasn't changed so much. Maybe the edges are softened, but yeah, I think knowing the past will help you and those in your community move forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I said you have lived a very interesting life and going into all the stuff. It's not just generational trauma, but also where we live and all that as well. So let's go into that. And Rosemary, would you like to share anything?
Yes, thank you. I think a lot of people haven't even considered the generational wounding and what goes back. So they're thinking in the terms of me right now, the recent years that I've been on this earth. Why is it me, or why is it from the family? Just understanding what that generational factor is. Oh my goodness, I was going to say something that Kelly had talked about and it just went in and out. I think the point to go back on is, I think Kelly, you touched on this too, is you can't do this alone. You have to find somebody that can help you, whether it's doing the research, his family history, country history, but you need somebody to help and guide you, because you may not even know the right questions to ask. You may not even understand what you're going through that is generational. So I think the fact of doing the research and learning a little bit more about this generational wounding will really help open up a lot of understanding on why we are acting or feeling the way that we are, and maybe not lash out so much because now there's more understanding. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I just think getting the word out about it is education in itself.
Totally. Absolutely. And that's what I mean. A lot of people don't even realize that we've got wounds that are generational or ancestral that we don't even really know about and how it's affecting us. So I'd love to know, thank you ever so much for sharing that. But let's go into this thing about when we heal the wounds, we can heal the past and the future. And again, for people who are listening, I think it's definitely, if we heal the wounds now, we can definitely help heal the future. But how do we heal previous generations? How does that affect previous generations? Kelly, you're the one who's off mute.
The way that we can heal the wounds of previous generations is to make sure their stories are told and their lives and their cultures, their contributions, their family, their children, their ancestors, their language, their stories are not lost, but kept and shared and cherished.
Absolutely, sharing the stories from the past, totally. We're all off mute except for Abby. So, Anna, okay, who would like to
I
share?
can share a little bit. It's something I'm definitely passionate about speaking on and also embodying in my own life is the concept of healing the generations backwards and forwards, and more so specifically the generations forward. For example, my children. I talked about in my intro that I'm a cycle breaker. There are many cycles that have been passed down intergenerationally in my lineage on both sides that I have chosen to say no more, right? I'm not passing that anymore with my own kids. And one in specific that I can think of is the cycle of silence, where I come from a lineage where things don't get talked about, right? Like the hard, difficult things don't get spoken of, the dysfunctions, the traumas, all of that stuff is taboo to talk on. And that creates, not only does it create a breeding ground for shame and secrecy, but that's really what creates a lot of the isolation, a lot of the addiction that happens subsequently from not being able to speak openly about the things that we've experienced, as horrific as they've been. And I have been one to really say no more with that. And even in the work that I do, I speak very openly about the things I've worked through, the things I've overcome, the things I've experienced in a very matter of fact kind of way, not in a way that's like bashing people or anything like that. These are the facts. This is what I went through as a child. This is what I experienced, those kind of things. And this is what it did to me as a result, and that kind of a thing. And with my kids, when they have questions about things that could seem difficult, could seem hard, I sit down and I have a conversation with them. When they're, to give context, they're 7, 5, 4, and 1. They're very little right now. And so they're at a place where they're sponges, they're absorbing a lot of things. And I really loved what Kelly was talking about, digging into her ancestry and all of that kind of stuff. I've been doing the same thing in the last few years. I do have indigenous in me from what happened in colonization. My parents are from El Salvador. That was heavily colonized by the Spanish and the Portuguese and all of that kind of stuff. And because I've been really digging into that and really claiming and reclaiming my indigeneity, there's been a lot of interesting conversations that I've had with my kids about things that can be very difficult to talk about. Here in Canada, we have on September 30th, it's called the Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And it's a day when we honor the missing and murdered Indigenous children from the residential schools and all of that kind of stuff, right? And on the way driving my daughter to school the day before, because she didn't have school the next day, she asked me about it. No, I asked her, I was like, what do you understand about Orange Shirt Day, is what we call it here. And she's like, I just know that we wear an orange shirt the day before school, and we have some activities that we do at school. And then I began to explain to her what it actually meant. I was like, and in ways and terms that she could understand. When it was very interesting because she was very open, very curious, and it stuck with her. And that could have been an opportunity where I would have felt uncomfortable. I would have not wanted to talk about it because it's hard. Talking about children being ripped away from their families, taken to these schools that made them forget their language, forget their culture, all of that kind of stuff by force, by violence, and sometimes death. These are very heavy things to talk about, but I want my kids to know that there is no topic that is too crazy, too scary, to bring up. Let's have a discussion about this. Let's talk about these kind of things, right? And even things that are happening to like my kin in the States, right? Where there's heavy presence of like deportation and taking like kids and families and all of that kind of stuff, right? These are things that I want to be able to like speak on openly and freely with my kids so that they're not, and it's in a way that's informative, and it's also not in a way that this is the only way to think of things, right? I just want to be able to have those kind of dialogues because I sure as heck never had those kind of conversations growing up. Children are so curious. We laugh sometimes because their favorite word is why this and why that. And I remember I was so curious as a child. I wanted to know how come this and why that. And it was always shut down. Always shut down. And that was in the small things and not to mention in the really big significant things that happened in my family. And so that was something that now my children are going to think, they're going to grow up knowing that it's normal to have these hard conversations. It's normal to ask questions, that they're not going to get turned down or glossed over or swept under the rug, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so that's how I'm healing the generations in front of me, right? Because then when they have children, I'm hoping that they will pass that down with their children and there'll be an open book and have these kind of dialogues rather than shame and secrecy, and that everything looks good on the outside. Inside, there's all this stuff going on that nobody speaks on.
Yeah. And it's so important. And I'd just like to take a moment, Abby, just to really honor you, truly honor you, because that's a wonderful example, especially for children in today's world. And I see previous generations, our generations before, were shut down. And no one really wanted to have those hard questions, those hard conversations that we all have questions about. But so thank you for allowing that to happen in your family and in future generations. Thank you so very much, really honoring. And Anna, what about you? I think you have something that you would like to share about this. And how do we really heal past generations?
Yeah, so thank you also to Abby. I really love to see people really standing in their power and just breaking the cycle, like she mentioned. It's just incredible. It helps so many people. It's really so much more powerful than you probably even realize. And this is possible for all of us. And so really, firstly, I would say for any method you use to heal, and there are many methods, of course, for any method you use, you literally can call in your ancestors. Call them into your field, however you want to sense that, however you want to see it or feel it or just intend. You can call your ancestors in. What I do is I actually ask them to spiral in behind me, like two lines coming behind me into my heart from the back. It's a kind of a specific way that I see it, but they spiral in to get as many ancestors as possible, both mother and father line, into my space, and I have my energy field expand to include all of them. And so that's actually a literal kind of step-by-step process you can use to really include your ancestors. And then whatever method you're using, intend that it heals your generational wounding as well. So if I were to heal maybe lack and famine and poverty, for example, that's in all of my father's line. You know, some of them came from Poland, walking by foot for months to get to the ship to come over to the US. They literally, some of them didn't have shoes. It's very strong poverty energy. And so if I were to heal that poverty and lack energy that even affected me as well as my father, just I can see it, how it has affected them. And so I can do my healing process. I have my healing process, but there are many processes. And I literally intend, may this be healed for myself, but also for all of my ancestors, my maternal line, my paternal line, all of them. And you can even include it into past lives and your past selves and your parallel lives and your parallel selves, you know, every other part of you that is within your sphere of healing. Because yeah, it actually can be that simple. Just bring their energies in, and they also have gifts for you as well. They don't just bring pain into your DNA. They also bring a lot of wisdom and gifts. And so you can also ask them for that wisdom and for those gifts. Going back to something Abby said in the beginning with really embracing her scars, emotional and physical. The scar is there because it still has that wisdom. And
Totally.
so we can have generational scars. We can have that wisdom so that this pain was not in vain. We still learn something from it. Not that it was necessary for learning, but we do learn from that. We gain that wisdom and we can carry those scars as wisdom.
Yes.
And so those are two ways that we can really connect with our ancestors to heal, but also to receive those gifts and that wisdom, which is what I'd like to share.
Thank you so much, really, for that. And I want to go into that a little bit more, what you mentioned, especially how our scars have that wisdom. So thank you. And Rosemary, would you like to share anything about that, about how do we heal the past, but also, before we wrap up, what Anna mentioned her method, what methods have you used or that you can recommend to help us heal from the wounds that we don't know about?
It's interesting. You may have noticed that I've been struggling with the lighting.
Yes.
So it's getting dark here, so I have to turn on the light. And it reminded me of what the Riva experience is. The Riva is actually the name of a goddess who takes us from darkness to light. And I had to come from the darkness to the light in my journey. And Abby touched on this, which was part of that learning for coming from the darkness to light, is communication. If we can't communicate what we feel, or even just ask the simple questions of our parents. Like, my parents went through World War II. They had horrific experiences. My grandmother lived through it. So how much further back, because my parents are from Austria. So it was some very stressful times there. But I never asked the questions. And now that they're gone, I wanted to ask more questions. Had I asked the questions and got some answers, but then again, like Abby said, sometimes they don't want to talk about it because there was a traumatic experience for them. So the silence, the lack of communication builds on these scars, these traumatic ancestral issues that we may sometimes unaware of. And now that if we can have that conversation, but I like what Anna said about the exercise about bringing in the ancestors. I really like that. And I think if we can adapt something like that to get an understanding, even if it's not a physical communication like we are doing right now, but a spiritual communication is so important, because we need to come from the darkness to the light. And I just got goosebumps. So it was very interesting that the lighting was giving me messages here to express. So thank you so much for hearing me out on that particular issue.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. All righty. Now, before we wrap up, would anyone else like to share any experience that you've had or any tips or techniques that people who are listening can explore? Because I also agree it's probably very important not to do this on your own. But what other methods are there out there to heal those wounds, that trauma?
I'll keep this very brief because there's so much wisdom in this circle. This is why I love these kinds of opportunities, because speaking of going back to our ancestral ways of being and knowing, this is how we healed, was in community and circle, especially as women. We would gather together and we would talk about things and we would story tell and all of that kind of stuff. And it was interesting because for me, early on in my healing and recovery journey, one of the most potent and powerful ways that I was able to heal was in these kind of situations where I was in either a private small group setting where it was like group therapy, and I would hear person after person share things that I once thought was unspeakable, or it was like, oh my goodness, nobody could ever know this. When I would hear these stories, and it was just this, it was so powerful. And that's something that now I'm so grateful that I'm able to do, is build and create communities so that women can come and gather and we can talk about hard subjects. And there's so much joy in it as well. When we're laughing, we're crying, we're gathered together like in this group energy and group magic. And it's just, it's so healing, incredibly healing. And so that's one of the biggest ways that I've been able to heal. And the more I do it, the more whatever used to have power and control over me, no longer, it loses its power and control. And I'm able to then more speak openly, right? And then the wound starts healing even more, rather than it being fragile and tender and the scab keeps falling off and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's been one of the big key ways that I've been able to heal and now provide healing for others as well, is having that community sense and that group and that together. We do not, one of my mentors speaks on this, we cannot become ourselves by ourselves. And so
Totally agree. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Kelly or Anna, just before we wrap up, any last techniques that people can use to help heal? Anna, yes.
Yeah, so there are some simple things that I like to teach that really anyone can do. And that is in conjunction with what Abby has said and everything else that's out there. But one thing I like to do really is just do a process of feeling the pain of the trauma, whatever it is, in the body, to let it move and shift and dissolve on its own in the light of my awareness. Just by keeping my awareness on it and feeling it,
Sure.
it will already release its wisdom to me. And I say, you are welcome here. I accept the wisdom. I integrate that wisdom. Thank you. I can thank that trauma. And then I can also bring in the divine presence to help me to dissolve it and recycle it and transmute it into a blessing for myself, for my family line, for all of those people who need it, who are dealing with a similar issue. If it's dealing with a trauma of lack, I can wish abundance onto everyone in my family line and everyone else who deserves and needs abundance right now, which is all of us.
Yes.
So it's a very simple, energetic, it's a way of moving the energies by feeling the emotions and just offering it up as a blessing. And the source, the divine, is always there to support me so I don't feel alone in doing that as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's something, again, that I agree in, bringing in the divine, helping the divine, whatever you call the divine, whether it's the God, the universe, our higher self, to help heal those wounds and especially the generational trauma that we've had. Kelly, before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you, because it is time to wrap up, if your pain had a voice today, and as Anna mentioned, our wounds want to share wisdom. If your wounds would like to give you some wisdom, if your pain had a voice, what would it be sharing with you today? And then also tell us if you've got any offers that you would like to share with our audience.
Okay, wow. If my pain had a voice, it would be the cry of a woman warrior. And the cry would be the call for other people to come join me on my journey, with my hand behind me, pulling people through the dark and into the light.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And oh, yeah.
Yes.
And my offers is you can find more about me at my website at kellytuttle.org. I have written a book, After the Crash: How to Keep Your Job, Stay in School, and Live Life After a Brain Injury. It's also on Audible. I have a brain injury journal on Amazon. It's called My Brain Injury Recovery Journal. I offer an online program for people who want to get back to work. So I'm really passionate in helping people get back to work after a brain injury. And I also have a YouTube channel, which it's called Kelly Tuttle, Brain Loving Advocate, where I create videos educating about brains
And
and
Kelly,
health.
sorry to interrupt, but we will be putting all your links below.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You don't have to worry about the links, but we will be putting all that information below. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just really aware of the time, and I want to give
Okay.
everyone else a chance to share finally. Rosemary, you're off mute, so I'm going to pick on you. If your pain had a voice, if your wounds would like to share one bit of wisdom, what would that be?
To make the decision to not allow anybody to make you feel small.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I have several offerings, and one of them is a free one, and then there's some mini sessions. But something that helped me through mine was my discovery of the Riva experience. And Riva, there's 4 parts to it: reflect, explore, visualize, and then take it all together in the line. So
Thank
Riva actually helped me so I can help others.
Thank you ever so much. And I will also be exploring Reeve. I have the honor of knowing Rosemary, not met physically, but a lot online. And I do recommend everyone else to check out the Reeve experience, and as well as everything else that these women have to offer. Thank you ever so much. And Anna, what about your beautiful self? And because you actually mentioned too that your wounds have wisdom. So, what are your wounds? What's the wisdom that your wounds are sharing today? And do you have any offers?
It really comes down to the fact that we can do this, that we really can heal this. It is not too big. It comes in step by step, and I just want to empower people, because that is what all my healing has told me, because my wounds were where I gave my power away, where I did feel powerless. And so all of that wisdom now is that I am empowered, and I empower everyone who's listening, that they can do it themselves. That's my wisdom number 1. And yes, anyone is welcome to visit me at my website. It's anapashyanti.com. And so I have a course that teaches people how to do some of that healing in the body that really addresses physical issues, but it's obviously through emotional and energetic healing as well. And then if they'd like to work with me one-on-one, that's available too. Yeah.
Thank you ever so much for sharing that and for sharing your wisdom. And Abby, last but not least, before we finally say goodbye, what is your pain trying to tell you?
Wow, that's a really potent question. I think what comes up for me right away when I think about that is, again, and this is speaking to little me and also current me, that no matter how dark, how dense, whatever you're going through, it feels and looks that there is hope, that there is a way, there is a light at the end, and that we can get through this and we do heal, we do recover. That is something I remind myself of all the time, because yeah, these are scars that we're walking around carrying forever, right? They're with us forever. And just allowing for them to breathe, to presence themselves in whatever way they choose to, rather than numb, distract, avoid, all of that kind of stuff, knowing that I'm deeply supported and able to work through whatever it is that life throws at me is very comforting, because I've done it before. And then my offering, one that I'm just really promoting right now, is my leadership breakthrough call. It's a complimentary 60-minute call. We get on, I weave in human design in there. So we look at your individual, unique, energetic blueprint, how you're meant to lead in the world, how others see you, all of that kind of stuff. And if you're in a place where you're feeling stuck, not really knowing what to do, where to go, but you know that you want to move forward and step into visibility and all of that kind of stuff, that's what we do in this call. And it's a lot of fun. I know the links will be included in the show notes.
We will definitely be putting all your links in there. So I would just like to say another very much huge thank you to all your amazing women, to Rosemary, to Kelly, to Anna, and to Abby, for joining us today on today's Wisdom Circle, and again honoring our beautiful host Tawana Yvette, who is also very much to help people to heal from their ancestral wounds, but couldn't make it today. So for anyone who is watching, click on the links below and connect with these amazing women. And also, if you want to know more about Sacred You, just click on the links and come and join us. We have some incredible wisdom circles coming up. It's much more about healing the wounds that we did not choose. So thank you ever so much for joining us today.